Okay, so welcome back. Thank you very much. We're going to now have a guest, David Noakes here, who's going to tell us about the wonders of GC MAF. And I think this might be one of the most important and enlightening things you've heard for a long time. So thank you very much for coming, David.
Thank you, Clive. Right, well, GC MAF is a human protein that all healthy people have inside them. It has 20 attacks on diseases that we know of at the moment. The immune system doesn't work without it, and of course the immune system can get rid of about 6,000 different diseases. So it's a very, very important protein in your body. However, if a disease comes along, and this includes cancer, the disease will try to prevent production of your own GC MAF. And it can do that if you are weak, if you have a down period, if you are stressed, if you've eaten too much sugar. You are giving the enzyme nagalase, which diseases send out, a chance to prevent your body making GC MAF. And
so is that MAF?
It's spelt Golf Charlie, Mike Alpha Foxtrot. So if that happens, you then lose your 20 attacks on various diseases. 6 of GC MAF's attacks are on cancer, and you lose those. So if the disease that is taking down your GC MAF happens to be cancer, if successful, the cancer will then explode and take over, and you are usually dead in about 5 years. There are about 1 billion people, we estimate, in the world who do not have GC MAF inside them because of disease. So 6 billion people have it and about 1 billion don't. Obviously, as it's a human protein, as all of you can attest, it has no side effects, and you can attest to that because you have it inside you now. So what we do in our company, in our laboratory, we extract GC MAF. We can extract it from blood or milk, only obviously from healthy blood or milk, because unhealthy blood or milk won't have it. It's a 24-step process, and we end up with 1/1000th of a gram of GC MAF, which is what we administer. 1/1000th of a gram. That is all you have inside you. So we then give this GC MAF, which we have to suspend in saline solution because it is such a small amount. We give this GC MAF, and there are 5 ways of getting it into the body to people with disease. And within minutes of getting the GC MAF back into your body, your attacks on the diseases start up again. And the last thing to start is your immune system. It takes 3 weeks for your immune system to be rebuilt. It's stunning, really, how many diseases can be cured by GC MAF. Autoimmune diseases. We had a chap come in over the moon. He was in and out of A&E. He had all sorts of diseases related to his autoimmune condition. They've all gone now in, I think it was 3 weeks. GC protein's made in your liver, and the GC protein is made into GC MAF by your immune system. A B cell comes along and takes 1 of the 3 sugar molecules off the GC protein, and a T cell does the same, and you're now left with GC protein with 1 sugar molecule, and that is GC MAF.
Sorry, please could you repeat? Yeah, that last chunk you just said.
Right, how the body makes GC MAF.
From GC protein.
Right, so your liver makes GC protein. 3% of your blood is GC protein. And a T cell from the immune system comes along, takes 1 of the 3 sugar molecules off a GC protein molecule, and then A B cell does the same, and now you have GC protein with only one sugar molecule on it, and that is GC MAF. But it only does that to a tiny amount of your GC protein because you only have a billionth of a gram of GC MAF inside your body. It's the most important billionth of a gram you can think of. So in the body, GC MAF and GC protein are part of the vitamin D pathway. In fact, one of the names of GC MAF is vitamin D binding protein, which means GC protein. Vitamin D binding protein macrophage activating factor, that is one of the names of GC MAF. It's actually a misnomer. Back when it was first discovered in 1990, 24 years ago, they thought all it did was rebuild the immune system and activate macrophages, which is why it was called macrophage activating factor, but that's only 1/20th of what it does. And in the laboratory, we have a laboratory where we are doing research all the time. We have 4 eminent scientists. One of them is here today, Linda, and we work with the University of Florence, who's also working on GC MAF, and that's how we got the number of actions of GC MAF up from 2 to 20, these 2 laboratories working together. Perhaps we got into GC MAF because we wanted to do something about cancer. And it was the hardest way to go in because it makes you very unpopular if you do anything with cancer. When we first started out, we were curing stage 2 cancers. Not all of them, but probably 80% of them, fairly easily. And then we learnt about the protocol, what we call the protocol, the nutrition. And the protocol is very simple. It's at least 2 shots of GC MAF a week, 0.25 ml. That's actually 2 billionths of a gram. That's putting in double what you need. And you have to take vitamin D because it's part of the vitamin D pathway, and it only has 40% its power if you have low levels of vitamin D, and pretty well everyone with cancer's got vitamin D down at the 20 level instead of the 60 nanograms per milliliter that they should have. So you've got to take vitamin D. You cannot eat sugar because Otto Warburg found out 40 years ago and wrote a paper on the very simple fact that cancer feeds and lives exclusively on sugar. And this is such a well-known fact in science. It's totally indisputable, and yet you won't find one oncologist who will tell you to stop eating sugar.
And that's why in the NHS they're giving people hot chocolates on the cancer wards for the sugar.
You walk into the NHS, into a cancer ward, and you look at the food they are feeding them, and you are absolutely horrified. They have no idea what they are doing. Then, of course, carbohydrates in the body turn into sugar. So if you are fighting cancer, you must not eat carbohydrates or sugar. You must eat meat, fish and vegetables because you need the lipids. Some vegetables are more important than others. Asparagus and broccoli spears seem to be the most important. And finally, the last part of the protocol is in the last stages of cancer, people get anorexia cachexia. That is to say, most people die of starvation because their bodies can no longer digest food. And we give people MAP proteins. And branch chain amino acids are a similar thing, but the ones we use are pre-digested. And one pill is the equivalent of eating a whole chicken. And we can put on, in a dying person, we can put on 3 to 4 kilos a week in weight with these MAP proteins. But anyway, the final result of our adopting this protocol, which is, the vitamin D, eat the right things, is that we now regularly cure terminal stage 4 cancer people if they have 2 months to live, providing they have not had too much chemotherapy, because if they've had too much chemotherapy, it wipes out their blood and immune system counts. So you're putting the GC-MAF into the body, you're basically putting it into an empty void, it's got nothing to work with, and those people die. But if you haven't had too much chemo, if you do the protocol, then if you are terminal stage 4 cancer with 2 months to live, you can confidently expect to be cancer-free in a year. Now, we opened 3 clinics. We can't do anything in England. In fact, we don't even like supplying GC-MAF in England because the laws are so bad. I must come back to that if you remind me. So we had to open our clinics in Germany and Switzerland. And we didn't really know what the law was in Switzerland. So we asked people not to come unless they had at least 3 months to live, because we didn't want to annoy the Swiss authorities by having people dying in our clinic. Well, 5 people effectively didn't tell us the truth and arrived after the point at which their doctors predicted they would die. Of those 2 did die. The other 3 we sent home with 25% tumour reductions and put them on the path to become cancer-free. So 60% success at the point of death is pretty good. So in the clinics, what we actually do is we employ 5 doctors in the clinics, and we use ultrasound effectively to squirt GC-MAF onto the tumour inside the body, and the ultrasound guides the syringe. We can also use the frequencies. We know the frequency of GC-MAF in Goleg, so that we can drive it in the right direction, and you can actually see it. You can actually see the Goleg. Actually, we only use Goleg in the clinics. You can see the Goleg being driven into the tumours. So on the first week they get a 25% tumour reduction on average. The worst we've had is 8%, the best we've had is 40%. On the second week though, of course, you've only got 75% of the tumour left, so we get rid of 25% of 75%. So on the third week, we haven't got rid of 75%, we've generally got rid of about 50–55%. And we send them home then to do the protocol, the home protocol if you like, that I just explained to you, and you'd be amazed, something like 20–30% do not do the protocol at home. It's surprisingly successful with pancreatic cancer. Everyone thinks pancreatic cancer is a death sentence. Well, when we get pancreatic patients at the clinic, they get the same tumour reduction that everyone else does. And if they do the protocol, they too can expect to be cancer-free in about 6 months, because we get rid of 50% of the cancer in the clinic, so they don't have to do a whole year, they only have to do about 6 months. We had one very nice chap called Paul, who has 3 little airplanes in the USA, and he's mid-70s. Most of the people are 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're all terminal. Pretty well everyone arrives as terminal. He had pancreatic cancer, and his pancreas had stopped producing insulin. The cancers had grown, the tumours had grown so large, he couldn't produce insulin anymore. So he arrived at the clinic with his medication, with his insulin medication, which he was injecting every day. He got a 25% tumour size reduction in his first week, and he also got the bonus that his pancreas started producing insulin again, and he threw his medication away. So he stayed for 3 or 4 weeks, and he got excellent reductions. And he's one of the people who then didn't bother to take it when he got home. He's still alive now, but very, very disheartening for us. I'll tell you a couple of interesting stories. We had this woman arrive, who I will call Deirdre. And she walked through the front door, walked upstairs to the treatment room, sat down and died. And I maintain that's not 3 months. From downstairs to upstairs is not 3 months in my view. Anyway, she comes from Geordieland, Newcastle, so her relatives are having a real go at our staff. We're going to close you down, blah, 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 you know. Meanwhile, our 2 nurses were beating the living daylights out of her dead body. And after 45 seconds of this, they restarted her heart and breathing. Lynn over there got a 40% tumour reduction in her in a week. She's back in Geordieland. She's doing the protocol absolutely ruthlessly, and we expect her to become cancer-free in the next 6 months.
Well done. Amazing.
Yes, so I think Lynn can take all the credit for that.
Go on, Lynn.
So that just goes to illustrate that death is not necessarily a barrier to becoming cancer-free. And one other case I'd like to tell you about is a woman who went to our Bayreuth clinic, which is in Bavaria, very close to the Czech border, northern Bavaria, very beautiful German countryside. And she arrived terminal stage 4, expected to live 3 weeks, and her left breast was just solid dripping tumour. There's no breast there, just ugly, horrible, raw tumour, which went right through into her armpit. But rather surprisingly, she had no secondaries. That's all she had. She was going to die just from that one cancer. So they managed to get a tumour reduction of 40% in 1 week. GC-MAF, one of the many things that GC-MAF does is it isolates tumours. So it surrounded this odd-shaped tumour with pus. They sent her in for surgery the following Wednesday. So she did a week in the clinic, finished on the Friday, went to surgery on Wednesday. They plucked the whole thing out. Surgeons plucked it out incredibly easily because it wasn't connected to anything anymore. And she became cancer-free in 11 days flat. Now, that cancer will come back if she does not stay on GC-MAF for another 8 weeks. She needs to be absolutely certain that the cancer has gone and that her own body's GC-MAF has started up again. So she needs to take, it's a precaution if you like, she needs to do another 8 weeks. And if she does, that'll set her up for the rest of her life. Her GC-MAF will start up again, and that cancer will never come back again. I wonder if there's any other stories I should tell you. Well, we have a number of people in Guernsey where we live. We have a woman who was terminal stage 4, well, breast cancer, but terminal stage 4 because of her liver, which was just full of cancer. She came to see me and said, right, well, you will be cancer-free in a year. She'd got this from 3 doctors. I mean, she's got scans, she's got everything. You know, you are going to die in 2 months. She's heard that from 3 sets of doctors. So I said, right, well, you will be cancer-free in a year, but you do have to do exactly what I say. And she did. She did exactly what I told her. She did the diet. She did everything exactly right, except she did drink 2 bottles of red every day. But red wine is actually good for you. And she was actually cancer-free in 11 months. She had a full set of scans. Her liver was normal. All the cancer had gone. She got a completely normal, perfect liver. And she is still cancer-free. In fact, she goes down to our clinics and mentors in our clinics, because it's good for people who are just starting the treatment to meet someone who's already finished it. Another woman who mentors for us is Gail. She was terminal stage 4 with 3 months to live with ovarian cancer and secondaries to the lungs. The GC-MAF cleared out her lungs in 3 months flat. It halved the size of the ovarian. And then it all went pear-shaped because she was stage 4, and this was back in the time when we only knew how to treat stage 2, and we didn't know about the diet and everything. And then she had a big bust-up with her partner, and the stress of that brought the whole lot back worse than it was in the beginning. But by that time we had learned about the diet, so then she had to be cured all over again. So it actually took her 3 years to end up cancer-free, but she is completely cancer-free, and she mentors as well. So I don't know what else to tell you. Yes, a question, Sean.
Cancers tends to come back again and again. How do you resolve that?
Right. Well, cancer only comes back again and again if you don't have GC-MAF in your body. So that is why we make people carry on for 8 weeks after it appears they're cancer-free, to make absolutely sure that all cancer has gone. So if you are going in for surgery, when a surgeon cuts, he releases cancer cells which float around the body and cause secondaries that you die of 2 years later. But if you are on GC-MAF for 3 weeks before the operation and 8 weeks afterwards, you will not get secondaries, and surgery becomes very, very safe. If you have prostate cancer, they do biopsies. And again, the needle is so big, it breaks open cancer cells which float around the body and cause secondaries. If you're on GC-MAF, you can have biopsies perfectly safely. And I must tell you about another chap, Peter, who arrived with terminal stage 4 prostate cancer, Gleason 10. Now most people get to Gleason 9 and die. He actually made it to Gleason 10, probably because he's only 55 years old. And he had 2 or 3 weeks to live. His face was ghastly grey. He had lymphedema on his legs. The cancer was falling out of his calves. He had to wear body stockings to hold his calves together. He couldn't really walk and he was in great pain. After 6 weeks of GC-MAF, he was walking an hour a day for fun. After 3 months, he had no symptoms of cancer whatsoever, no pain, nothing at all. The pain went at 6 weeks. About a year, 2 months later, we can see on ultrasound scans that he still has a bit of a tumour in his prostate. We can't be certain whether it's encapsulated or whether it's scar tissue, but in any case it's still reducing at about 15% a month. So we expect him to be completely cancer-free in about, well, another 8 months perhaps. So he may be 20 months from start to finish, but then he was an exceptionally difficult case. We always cure prostate cancer. It's a piece of cake. We always cure lung and breast cancer, which are very easy. Bowel cancer's more difficult, and bone metastases are more, take longer. Yes?
What about brain cancer?
We're a little worried with brain cancer because what the immune system does is it firstly swells and inflames tumours as the first part of attacking them. Well, that can give you intracranial pressure. Now, if you whack a large dose of GC-MAF in, its other attacks often reduce the tumour size in the brain. So that when the immune system comes along a few weeks later and has a go, it's too late. The tumour's already shrunk. Works very, very well with cyberknife surgery, because with the surgery you can reduce the size of the tumour and then you really don't care whether the GC-MAF swells the tumour because you've got all that extra space there. Oh, and we do that in our clinic, by the way, very successfully. We treat brain cancers in our clinic quite confidently now.
Brain degeneratives. Have you had any experience with that?
Right. We actually found 10 of the things that GC-MAF does, 10 of its actions, and 3 of them are on the brain. It reactivates microglia cells in the brain, and it has beneficial effects on neurons, and between those two it actually creates new neurons. So we predicted in the paper we wrote that it would be good for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and what's the other one?
My father's got progressive supranuclear palsy.
MS.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a new one. Well, fairly.
Okay. Well, it's worth trying it. We just can't say.
Yeah. I think he'd be up for guinea pig, and Dad, he's kind of open to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have absolutely no idea whether it works, but I've stopped saying adamantly it will not work because I've been proved wrong too often. So we had this father, Nigel, whose 2 children have LMBBS, and only 300 people in England have got it. And basically that is like chronic fatigue syndrome in that you feel like death, you can't get out of bed, 18 hours a day in bed, and you can't hold a job down. But in this case, you go blind at the age of 25 and you die at the age of 40. So it's a pretty nasty thing to have. So his 2 children, son and daughter, were hopelessly depressed. And in 2 months, all the symptoms of LMBBS had left both of them. And absolutely incredibly, their opticians reported that their maculas were growing back. Their eyesight is improving, and at the rate they're going to be able to drive in a year. We had a person who had stage 4 kidney failure and chronic cirrhosis of the liver, possibly partly because she was drinking a bottle of vodka every other day. And she didn't give up the vodka, but she did start the GC-MAF. The report came back, she had perfect liver and kidneys. So it seems the cure for chronic cirrhosis of the liver and stage 4 kidney disease is GC-MAF and a bottle of vodka.
What about things like AIDS? Would it work on that?
We've cured 6 out of 150 people of AIDS, so we no longer mention AIDS at all, because 95% failure is too many unhappy people. I mean, this is the obvious way to cure AIDS. There's no question about it, you know. Acquired immune system deficiency, what does GC-MAF do? Rebuild the immune system. I mean, it's a perfect match. But the trouble is, in both Lyme disease and AIDS, the viruses surround themselves with biofilms, and the GC-MAF can't see the viruses. So,
possibility that maybe engineered that virus, the Lyme virus.
do we think the AIDS virus is engineered?
Particularly the Lyme virus, would that be something that might be bioengineered? Because it's so complex. It's got a spiral thing or something, doesn't it? Is that correct?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, because what they're saying in America, and I met a lady a couple of days ago with like Lyme's, and she's trying to get diagnosed. And she's saying that in America, they're diagnosed ALS because it's cheaper to medicate or to the insurance companies than Lyme's, and most people got 80% is Lyme's. That's what she said in what she found out. But when you want to talk about this film thing, biofilm, it surrounds the cell, doesn't it? So it doesn't.
Surrounds the viruses, so they can't be detected. Yeah.
Then when you just break that down, something, I know it sounds maybe out there, but vitamin C, wouldn't that break? Because that eats away when you have a virus and protein, it eats away the protein, doesn't it?
Well, we think that cider apple vinegar, bromelain and papain may help break down viruses, but we have no success with it. I mean, we've given up trying, really. You know, we'd have to recruit more AIDS patients and start all over again if we were going to do that. And Would hate to disappoint them. We've got so much work on, we just can't keep up with it. We've got 8,000 patients to run on the one side, and then we've got 3 clinics to run on the other side, and we just can't keep up with it all. We're hopelessly overwhelmed in every direction we look in. Richard?
How can people help you with your cause? Obviously we all want to help all this work, that's why we're all here. How can we help you in any way at all?
Well, can I think about that? That's very kind. Yeah, I'll think about that. I mean, no one's ever asked me that question before. So, yes?
How did you come to learn about nutrition and make that connection?
Well, our first stage for cancer person, this lady Gail, who's late 50s, and mentors for us in the clinics. She was our first ever stage 4, and we noticed that her progress went downhill in the winter, which got us thinking, well, what don't you have in the winter? Sunshine, vitamin D. So we asked Professor Marco Ruggiero in the University of Florence to do some tests of GC-MAF in the presence of vitamin D, and it was 2.5 times more powerful. So that was the first step. And Marco Ruggiero said, well, because of Otto Warburg, we know you shouldn't eat sugar. So then we're thinking, well, hang on, sugar, that's how it all got put together. It took a bit of time, slow brains, you know. It cures ulcerated colitis, IBS, most of the time. Diet is what makes the difference.